grant to receive funding from NISCA for art-related art classes for adult programming. And all my classes are geared to Chautauqua and Cattaraugus counties for the underserved populations. This grant is actually made possible by the funds from the Decentralization Program, which is a re-grant program of NISCA with the support of Governor Como and the New York State Legislature, administered by Tri-County Arts Council and also Patterson Library Art Program. Because of COVID, a lot of our adult programs are now on Zoom. So, you know, we're all having to change how we are able to lead instruction classes, instructed classes, and have book groups, and it's changing it so much for all of us. And I think there are a lot of people that are wanting to get away from the computer, and I think it's difficult to keep it interesting for them. So Wendy's ability to be able to teach this class on Zoom is just, it's a pleasure. So we're thrilled to have her. I could do a little introduction on you, Wendy, but shall I, or?
Oh, I'll edit it to just the good parts.
They're all good parts.
I was kind of hoping maybe we'd have let's introduce our other three guests here today, and then I'll introduce myself and go into some samples of my work and all that. So I think Joanne, where are you coming from?
I'm here in Westfield. I just moved back after being gone for 40 years last year, and so I've seen Nancy at the library, but no more mystery books at the library here.
You've read them all?
Zoom.
Well, we can do it on Zoom, but the club met and that was fun.
I know.
And but my dad was an art teacher here in Westfield for many years, and he also worked at the library in the art gallery. And so I've known Nancy for a long time.
Yeah, he was the original curator.
Yes.
Wow.
And set everything up. Yeah, it was a big task.
Right. So I've taught quilting for 15 years, and also I taught basket making, and but I prefer handwork like applique.
Excellent.
I thought this looked interesting, and I like owls.
Well, that works out well, because we're going for owls today, or actually not quite today, tomorrow, or next class.
Right.
So awesome. Well, it's good that we have at least one representative from well, two counting me from Chautauqua County. That's good. But then we also have Ina, who is coming from Florida. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Wow.
Yeah, I have a lot of New York connections. I used to live in New York State and have a lot of New York State connections, but live in Florida now. And I do photography. And I know Wendy through an international art organization that we're both part of. That's all.
So what made you decide to take my class, Ina? Put you on the spot here.
I want to expand to something. I don't know. I want to do something beyond what a million other people do. I'm pretty good at photography, but I want to try to somehow add on to it.
You seem to have a thirst for new knowledge, so that's good.
Yep.
And I think the farthest away award goes to Mavis.
Well, it is nighttime here.
Do you want to tell everybody where you're calling from?
I'm from a small town of 5,000 in Sangüesa, Spain.
Oh.
And I just love everything Wendy does. And I didn't prepare to be in my art studio because it didn't occur to me. I had the link open, but I'm on the wrong computer. So on Thursday, I will be in the other room, and I will I will not have two cats in a bed behind me.
Well, you certainly look comfortable. That's okay. That's okay. It's good. I have my dog lying on the floor here too. So, and truth be told, I'm in a spare bedroom. I'm not in my studio because I needed to set this up with good lights so that you guys could see what I'm doing. But anyway, a couple of housekeeping things about Zoom. If you want to set your view, you know, you guys are probably all really familiar with Zoom, but this, just so you know, this is the first time I've hosted a Zoom thing. Oh my gosh, which means we have somebody, Riley, waiting. Oh dear, wonder how long she was waiting. Riley. She doesn't have her speaker on. Hello, there she is. Riley?
Hello, this is Carrie. I'm in the public library, so I won't be able to speak.
Okay. All right. Well, nice to have you here. So you're coming from the library in Westfield?
No, I'm coming from the Ellicottville Library.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Welcome.
You can text to everybody.
And I was just saying that this is the first time I've hosted a meeting, so bear with me. And then as I said that, I looked up and I saw that you were waiting. So I hope you weren't waiting a long time. Anyway, there you are. Hello. So just like I said, there's a few housekeeping things about Zoom. What I'm going to do is, now that we've got the introductions done, I'm going to mute everybody. But if anybody has a question, feel free to just unmute yourself, and then you can just ask your question. I mean, I want you to make sure that you're interrupt me or whatever. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to mute everybody so that if there's any ambient noise, that it ends up staying. I know I'm going to do my intro. If there's any ambient noise, it won't make it pop into the speaker view, but we'll try it this way anyway. So anyway, I'm Wendy Bale. I am a cut paper artist and a charcoal artist, and I live in Jamestown. I actually live about 3/4 of a mile from the Audubon Center. So most people in the area know where that is. I'm right on the Pennsylvania border, but I am in New York, and I've been here since September actually of 2014, and I moved out here to take a job with Blair in Pennsylvania, and found out that I couldn't do some of the things I thought I was going to be doing, and kind of rekindled my art career. And in the process of that, I discovered through a little workshop at Roger Tory Peterson Institute in Jamestown. I had a workshop in cut paper, and at that workshop, I made this little feather, and I've kept it all these 3 years now because it reminds me of kind of where I began with this. And so this is fair warning to you guys that paper cutting, it can be addicting. And at least for me, I was really comfortable with it from the get-go, and really love doing it. And I discovered it's really fun to share it with other people, whether it's through my artwork or through teaching people how to do this, and connecting with the people with not only through the art, but through the nature aspects of it, because I'm a nature artist. And so that's kind of my background as to how I ended up doing cut paper in a very brief way. But I do have some samples of my work, which I'm going to share on the screen here. Nancy, I am recording. So what do you need from me, Nancy? Let's see, you want me to, the host to approve for the recording. Oh, okay, let me see here. Allow record. Okay, there we go. All right. I'm going to give you guys, actually, before we get into that, if anybody wants to ask questions, make sure that you can unmute yourself and that works. I want to make sure that, you know, maybe, Ina, will you unmute yourself and let me just make sure that you can do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And we should all change to speaker view.
Yeah, I think speaker view is the best way to go because I'm going to be showing, let me show you, I'll give you a sample here. I'm going to be able to switch over to this camera, and I can give, the demonstrations are going to be given here. So you should be able to see relatively well, as long as that camera stays working. All right, so I'm going to share my screen for a second here, and make sure I can find the parts that I want to share. I'm going to share this, but it's not going to be the right thing, so bear with me a second here. This is just a little video that that I'll play for you that shows some of my work. This is the trailer to the show that I just had at Tri-County Arts Council. So this is some of my cut paper pieces. And I think it's interesting it's not playing the sound, but that's okay. You can imagine soft music going along with this.
Wendy,
Yes.
you have it on mute.
I do. How do I? Oh, thank you. There we go. Much better. So this was some of the, this is kind of some of the pieces that, that I had at this show. And I do a combination of, like this piece here has got a combination of a charcoal drawing, and then this is all cut paper. And you'll see, like with the one with these birds here, the red wing trio, you can see there's sort of two different things going on. There's cut paper sculpture, and then there's also paper cutting in those layered parts. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But so this is, and you're, you know, welcome to go to my website, WendyBaleArtFirst.com, and peruse this, and you can see all of this kind of stuff. I don't want to take a whole bunch of your time on this because we want to get cutting. That's the whole idea of being here. But I just wanted to give you an idea what I do with it. But there is so much that can be done with this particular medium. It's really quite amazing. If I can get, that's not where I want to be next, sorry. Here we go. So I want to introduce you to, oh, and this is going to just keep going until I tell it to be quiet. Hang on. Sorry. Pause. Okay, so this is an organization called the Guild of American Paper Cutters. And I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit, real briefly, about paper cutting styles, because there are more paper cutting styles than you can imagine. And many of them you probably have seen but didn't realize what you were looking at. And the Guild of American Paper Cutters is a wonderful resource for looking at traditional and modern contemporary pieces that are done with paper cutting. I have to admit, I can't even pronounce a lot of the different styles of paper cutting, but papel picado is one that is done in Mexico, where they're actually punching the paper. This is the Jewish paper cutting tradition. So these are sort of true paper cutters. You know, Nancy had a show for us at the Octagon Gallery there at the library, and one of the people came up to me and she says, "So you're doing Scherenschnitze?" And I said, "I have no idea what that is." So I was actually already showing this work and didn't know even what the stuff was. But this is so there's many different traditions. This is a beautiful, very artful style of a Polish type of art of paper cutting. But this one is my absolute favorite. And those of you who know that I love doing stop motion, this kind of relates to that a little bit. This is an Indonesian version where they have a puppet theater done with cut paper pieces. So there's many wonderful things that can be done with this medium. And I highly recommend you check out the Guild. You can see, this is their Instagram page, the Guild of American Paper Cutters. And you can see there's an amazing amount of modern things, not just the traditional ones, but modern ways of doing cut paper that are very eclectic. I mean, there's everything from people using words in and type in their pieces to very elaborate things. Now, I'll get out of that a second, because what I do is somewhere is a little bit of a hybrid between paper sculpture and paper cutting. So this is trying to get it so that I can get to the bar to move it. There we go. This is a series of things showing more paper sculpture. So you can see that it's still cut paper, and in some cases people are putting a little bit of origami into it, but many different forms. I love this one with a single piece of paper, and that one I like that. But look at those cuts. I mean, those are goals for me, folks. I can't do anything like that. But it's really fun to try out the different pieces or the different techniques. This one is so funny. I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but that piece is actually this piece, and then they pull the head out of it. It's all a whole bunch of different layers of cut paper that are all together like that. Isn't that crazy? So anyway, that's cut paper sculpture. So what you see, and I'm gonna stop the share for a second here. So what you'll see with what we're going to ultimately be doing with this is sort of a bit of a hybrid of that. It's a little bit more like a sculpture, because you can see it's got some depth to it. But then we can also do some things with the background, perhaps doing more traditional layered paper cutting too. There's all kinds of things we can do with it. And I encourage you guys to go off and sort of do your own thing. Everybody's is going to look different. Not expecting that these are all going to be the exact same thing, even though we're working from similar patterns. So anyway, can I unmute you this way? Let's see. I don't know. I guess I'd have to unmute you separately. So, but if anybody has any questions at that point about paper cutting, or comments about paper cutting, or anything at this point, feel free to jump in. All right. So next, I'm going to switch over to my other camera, and we're going to look at some of the tools and things that we have that we have needed, and then you guys can pop in and let me know if you have any questions about what we need to be working with here. So I've got the printout. Now today we're going to be using this one, which is just page 3. It's really all you need today. But starting for the other classes, we'll have to have the other pages. So I'm hoping everybody got their papers printed out okay. And then I know that there's, it was kind of vague about the papers, but you know, whatever type of paper you want to use, hopefully you have a little bit of an assortment so you can see the different things that happen as you work with them. And I know Ina and I were talking a little bit about the tissue paper, and I did not mean Kleenex, just so you know. This is one of my favorites to use, which is a Japanese paper, and it's a nice, it's called Unryu, and it comes in different weights, and it's very thin and it's very translucent. So that is my absolute favorite to use for what we're going to be doing, but in a pinch, you could certainly use like gift wrap tissue paper, and yes, yes, the rice paper will work perfectly. And there's different types of rice paper, which actually I have discovered that I learned from, I don't know how many of you know Deb Eck, but Deb is an educator that knows a ton about paper, and she's sort of my paper guru. And so she told me that rice paper was originally grown in the rice paddies, but it was not actually rice. They would grow it in the off season, so they'd grow rice one time and then they'd grow the mulberry. It's actually mulberry, so it's actually made from something else, but the name rice paper stuck to it, because I kept saying to her, no, it says rice paper right on the package, and she says, yes, but it's not made of rice. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I actually just learned that maybe a month ago. So there's a lot to learn about paper, and it's an amazing, very accessible thing. And what we're going to be doing, you're going to be able to use different types of things. And yes, Ina, your Victoria's Secret wrapping paper should work just fine. Does it have VS logo on it too? Okay, good. Okay, so then we need scissors. Now, I did the entire project using a great big pair of scissors just to make sure that I wasn't asking for you know, people to have better tools than normal. But this is my favorite pair. I actually have several kinds of scissors that I use, and I like using them kind of back and forth. If I'm doing a lot of paper cutting, I don't like to have it be too much, too hard on my hands to use the same one. So this one has like a little different action to it. But for the purpose of what we're doing today, I'm going to be using those because those are my favorite. And a pointed tool for embossing, that's this piece for me. This is it's a very basic, it's from Fiskars, and I love this thing. It works great. I also bought a whole bunch of these on Amazon for in a package of 5 for about $5, so they were about $1 a piece, and these work great too. But like I was saying earlier, the dead pen with no ink in it is probably just fine too. A knitting needle, crochet hook, embossing tool. I've got a bone folder kind of thing like this that has a similar hook onto it. Joanne, I think you said that's what you had, was some sort of a tool similar to this. So this doesn't have quite as fine of a point on it as what I like with this one, but you know, sometimes it just, a lot of times you can even just use your thumbnails too. So we all have that, hopefully. So then what else do we need? A drawing pencil and an eraser, and a small piece of foam core. Now I usually use white foam core, but because I want you guys to be able to see the difference, I'm going to use a piece of black foam core. But if anybody doesn't have that, don't worry. You can just use a magazine or an old phone book or something like that. You just need something to press against, because if you do it against the hard table, you won't get as nice of a debossment. And then plain old glue stick works great. I also use, for bigger parts that I'm gluing together, I use tacky glue. And I do put that, I don't know, some of you more crafty people that like gadgets like I do. This is a, it's just the bottle is the main thing. This has just got tacky glue in it, and then it's got this nice little, oh, did I freeze up? No, there we go. Okay, so it's got this little thing for the glue to come out like that. And it has this wonderful needle that goes down in there so it never gets goobered up, which is my favorite thing about that. So that's kind of the rundown on the main things that we need. It is also super helpful with some of the little pieces that you do. It's helpful to have some pair of tweezers to move things around. And also binder clips are handy for holding things together, or I even use like a little bean bag to weight down stuff that I'm gluing. So that's pretty much it for what we need for stuff to work with. And does anybody have any questions on that at all? Any concerns about what they have, or wondering whether they're going to work all right? Okay. So I want to show you the list of steps on that page 2 of that piece that I gave you. There are 10 steps to making the paper sculpture from scratch, and those are, if you look at the first 5 steps of those I've already done for you, but I wanted you to be aware of what those steps are. And I'm going to switch back over here, sorry. I wanted you guys to be aware of what the steps are to put something together from scratch, because I'm going to give you a pattern that's already made, but we're creative people, and I know that we like to do things on our own. So with the feather that we're going to do today, you can use my pattern, or you can make up your own. You can do whatever you like with that. But I think the most important thing, at least to me, is starting with research, because I think it's helpful to have some idea of what your subject actually looks like, so that you end up, I mean, I didn't have the benefit of actually looking at a real feather when I made this crude little thing here. But I do think that when you actually take the effort to look at the feather and see the fluff and see the direction that things go, and the fact that it isn't cut in half, that one side's bigger than the other, it's not exactly down the middle. These types of things will make your your final product have a little bit more sense of reality. And excuse me. So, so I think the research part is really good to at least get you started. And then drawing a sketch and then doing a quick outline around that to decide how your layers are going to be. And I think Mavis might recognize these things because this was the original sketch that I did for a piece that that she's quite familiar with. And so that shows where, you know, your sketch can be pretty rough, but then to figure out kind of how the parts are going to go, you can use tissue paper to kind of outline what those parts are going to be. So you draw how you want it to look in general, and then you have to kind of figure out, like, that is the shell, and then this is the body of the guy underneath there. And so having the turtle be in multiple layers is what ultimately, I have a little photo of him. I don't know if you can see that. So anyway, so that's sort of the quick overview of getting it ready to be where I got you to with that with those pattern pieces. So when we get into working on our owl, which I'll show you, when we get into working on that, that's all of that work ahead of time has been done for you, but I want you to know how to do it so you can do it yourself later. And the techniques that you're going to learn with working on our feather today are actually pretty much all the techniques that you'll need for the larger pieces. That's why I liked starting teaching with a feather, because it's something flat and it's something contained, but it gives you a chance to learn all the techniques you're going to need to kind of branch out and do whatever it is you like to do on your own later. So at this point, I'm going to switch over. Any questions from anybody here at this point? Okay, I'll switch my camera over, and if you want to get out your that page 3 and get out your pattern, and we'll start cutting. I'll quit yakking and you can start having some fun here. Oh, I did want to. Now, when Mavis came to my studio and we talked about feathers the last time, we got into Googling what the different parts of the feather were called. So I kind of played around with this. So for the purposes of us working on this today, remember that this is the quill and this is the tip. So if you're talking about the tip, it's up here, and this is the shaft that goes up the middle. And the whole thing is a vein. And then these, we'll just call them downy barbs because I can't even pronounce plumas, whatever that is. But anyway, so this is, for the purpose of what we're doing, we'll talk about mostly just the shaft and the vein. And which end is up is the tip. So. All right, so if you guys get out your pattern, I'm gonna cut this out right straight off of this printout. But like I said, if you want to pick out a different pattern, you can take an actual feather and just put it on your piece of paper and trace around it. Or if you want to get fanciful about it, like I sometimes do, you can just make it up. but it is nice to have at least some sort of a reference. And you want to leave a little extra room down at the bottom, because you want the material there to make the downy part that I can't pronounce down at the bottom. Okay. Oh, one thing I did want to mention that I forgot is I'm working with white paper because I wanted to be able to see it really well. Obviously, feathers come in many, many colors, but I like demonstrating it in white so that you can see the details of what we're doing. But one of the important things to do is to wash your hands before you start doing this, because the white paper can be kind of unforgiving about going at it after, being out pulling weeds in the garden and things. And while you're doing that, I'll show you sort of a progression of how it's going to go. So you had your pattern, and then here's what it looks like with a little bit of detail into it. And then here it's kind of progressing, getting more of those details into the vein. And some of the finer cutting aspects of it. I'll bring that up so you can see it. And this shows some of the debossment that we're going to be doing. I'll show you how to do that. And this, I wanted to show you this one because this one has areas of it where I've actually just torn it. Let's see if I can make it there. So you can see that it's just torn, it's not actually cut. And those things have a tendency to make it look more realistic. And hopefully by the end of the class today, you should have something that's gonna look about that much done. Of course, everybody's is gonna look different because everybody is gonna have their own self that they're putting into their work. So does everybody have their pattern cut out? Anybody need more time? Okay, so now take your, now go, yes, now you're Karen, right? I'm confused because it says Riley. But okay. Okay, my camera wants to cut in and out once in a while, but hopefully it won't be doing that again. I got the question if we're using cardstock. Yes, at this point, now get your cardstock out. And let's make sure my camera's working again. Oh, that's your daughter's name. You can change your name on there if you want, or you can just put up with me calling you Riley once in a while. But I've got it written down that you're Karen, so hopefully I'll remember. Okay, So now you've got your cardstock. I'm using, this is Canson Colorline paper, which is one of my favorites to work with, but I work with a lot of different kinds of paper. And what you want to do is go on the back side of your paper. I'm going to pick this side as my back because there's a coffee stain on there. So we'll start with that. And then if you're doing something that matters, if it's right or left, you're going to want to flip over your pattern for your feather too. And then this is just a matter of tracing it onto tracing the feather onto the piece of paper that you've chosen. And again, you guys can use other colors if you want. I like white just to show you a little better. Because if I were doing a black one, you can see it's kind of hard to see the stuff on that. All the fun that actually, believe me, it does have details in there, but you just can't see them very well. Okay. So once you have it traced, then you can cut that out. And you don't have to be real perfect about cutting it out because you're going to be altering that edge anyway. In fact, if you make it a little bit rough, it could be even better. And one thing that works really nice, like I was showing on that other part, is instead of cutting on this part, you could also choose to tear it, because then you'll automatically already have the paper fibers kind of fuzzy there. It gives you a little head start. So once you have it cut out, then that's when I like to get out my piece of foam core or my stack of magazines or whatever I'm using to press against. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. The next thing to do is to go in and erase your pencil lines if you can. It's on the back side, so it doesn't really matter. But one thing I have found is that the graphite from your pencil will sometimes smear onto the front. So it's kind of nice to have a cleaner thing to start with here. Okay. So now that the feather is outlined, I'm gonna flip it over and work on the correct side here, because I want to be able to see where the shaft is on this feather coming up the center like this. You could just mark it in there wherever you want, but there's something about doing it accurately that kind of sets you up for a good, once you have a good start on that, it kind of makes the whole feather come together much better. So pressing with your tool, whatever you've chosen to use, up and down that line, and then you'll see that it's made a line on your paper. So is that working for everybody? Give me a thumbs up or. All right, still working on the cutting. That's good. Okay, that's fine. I'll slow down a bit. I'm anticipating that on working on the feather, we'll have a chance to kind of work together on this, and it'll be more, you know, me showing you exactly what to do and you do it, whatever, that's fine. But in the next 3 classes, you're going to have a lot more freedom to kind of express yourself in it. I don't want you to feel like you have to make your owl be exactly like my owl. I can show you the techniques that I'm using to make it, but feel free to have fun with it and play around with different things. I mean, it's just paper. If you don't get it right, you can get the you can start over, and paper's cheap. All right, I'm going to show how to do the shaft again, if everybody's ready. All right, so put your completed piece or your cutout piece onto your foam core, and then there it is. And you're going to want to put that on right side up this time. So flip your paper over so that when you have your pattern, it matches, and line that up. And then take your tool like this. I'm curious to see how this is actually going to work. I think that, yeah, that seems like it is going to work pretty nice. So then use your tool to just go up and down that. You might have to go 3 or 4 times, just pressing. You want to press as hard as you can without wrecking the pattern, because that should put enough pressure on there to make a line so that when you remove the pattern piece, you should have a line visible in there. And it doesn't have to be real deep. It just has to be visible. And like I said, I like using the pattern to get that shaft, because this is actually, I guess that is that same feather. But if you have different feathers, I mean, here's a different feather that I did. It's slightly different, but it always has a little curve to it. It's never straight. We're trying to avoid doing things that look like little Christmas trees. You want it to have that sort of organic shape to it. So how's that working, Ina? You got it? Okay, excellent. So then once you have it marked in there, essentially where it is, you can flip it over and then make your line a little wider by doing another run that's gonna, at the bottom of it on the quill part, which is the bottom, and going toward the tip, you're gonna make it, it's kind of fat to begin with, and then it goes skinnier until it kind of meets the, so it's all just, so it's like one, it's like a railroad track at the bottom that goes into a single rail going up to the top of the tip of the feather. And I usually stop a little shy of the top, the tip. Although if you look at this real feather, it does go up there, but it's really, really fine. And so I usually stop about there. And then adding a little bit of shape to it. I usually start right away with starting to get a sense for where that quill is going to be, just kind of pinching that, because that starts making it look right away. It starts feeling feathery. And then This is the part that I often get the most, when I do demos for this, I get the most questions about how did you make that? And it's really just thumbs. So if you put your thumb on either side of that shaft down at the bottom, and is that showing up well? Can you see that okay? All right. If you just kind of press in with both thumbs on either side and bend that paper, I've just noticed that I have mine flipped over, so my coffee stain is on the right side. I'll have to fix that later. But if you just keep pressing on either side with your thumbs, you'll get that shaft effect because you've got you've got the 2 rows of embossment there. It doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to go over it a bunch more times with your tools to fix it. This is just sort of getting it into the spot. And don't worry if your fingers are making like mine are making like little kinks in there. It doesn't matter because that's all going to get covered up with debossing. But that's sort of the first sort of sense. You kind of want to get that started so that you know where that's going to be. So when you start putting your lines in with your embossing tool, you get it you get it there better. You know, kind of, you have a guide where to put it. So did that make sense to everybody? I'm flipping it over and gonna do it the other direction because silly me, I did it backwards, so. And this paper that I use as Canson Colorline is super forgiving. You can go every which way with it and it does not seem to mind. It's a pretty sturdy paper. Okay. So Ina, you getting something similar to this? Yes, excellent, excellent. Looking good. So Carrie, or is it Kari? I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Are you bending it so that both sides are folded up or down? They're down, I guess would be the answer. Because it's more pushing in. It's like smushing it in. I'll kind of exaggerate it here. It's more like that. Does that make sense? Because that's going to give you, oh, it sounds like Carrie. Okay, gotcha. It's hard to look at my work and then also check the chat. So if I don't see your stuff in the chat, feel free to unmute yourself and just go ahead and talk. That's fine with me. I just, that will define kind of where our shaft is going to be, and we can fine tune that a little bit more as we go along. So then the next step, is everybody pretty much ready to hop into the next step there? Okay. So if you take your the photograph of the original feather, you can see the direction. I actually split the feather before I took this picture so that you could see these directions that these parts go, where the barbs are pulled apart like that. And that's part of what makes it really look like a feather, is getting those angles in there. So avoiding going too straight will give it a much more natural feel to it. So sometimes at this point, I will actually flip my feather over onto the back side, and I might even, if I'm like in this case working with a real feather, I might even kind of draw in some guidelines for me, because I have a tendency to, once I get started going with the lines, I'll sometimes kind of screw up and end up where I don't want to be. So a few kind of guidelines can be helpful. It's totally optional. If you don't want to draw on it, you don't have to. But I always feel like that gives you a little bit of a little guidance. I kind of wrote on there lightly, but you can see, hopefully. So then, and does everybody have foam core? Is that, that's working? Okay, good. I didn't know if that was a hard thing for people to come up with, but I was thinking there's other things like meat trays. There's all sorts of, I have anything that sort of resembles foam core always ends up in my studio somehow, because I use it all the time. But so now, starting at the tip of the feather, you can take your embossing tool and start putting some lines in. You know what? Hold that thought. Let me have you do one thing first before we do that. Sorry. I want to get a nicer edge. This is easier to do before you do any further on the debossing. But I want you guys to get a nice edge on the outside of your feather. And the way I like to do that, now remember I tore this part. You can do that, that works great. But the other thing that works really nice is to just take your scissors and do a little kink in it. And I personally like it when you actually don't cut it all the way off, so that you end up with this little hanging chad. Would that be what it is, Ina? You're from Florida. So if you get this kind of little kinky edge on it like this, it will make a big difference in how the feather will look. Let's see if I've got one as an example. Well, this one's pretty good because I've got it kinked on. Get this out of the way so it shows better. I've got it sort of kinked on this side, and then on this side it's smooth. But you can see how it, there. The difference between a smooth edge and a little bit rougher edge. Even though in reality, the feather's pretty smooth, there's something about adding that little nick on the edge that seems to make it have a more realistic feel to it. But that is optional, of course. You can do it how you like. But I'm going to put a little kinky edge, and then, you know, sometimes the paper will completely cut off of there. You know, you're not trying to cut into the feather. Another thing that might be helpful is a reminder that the best way to get control on your scissors is always using the part closest to the center here, not using the tip. you don't want to try to do this ever, or almost never. I would say I never use the tip of my scissors. But I don't want to say never because I probably would come up with some reason to do it. But, and flipping it over back and forth to get the direction that you want it to go is helpful. So that you can get it to have a more realistic direction that those barbs are headed. Okay. So has everybody made it all the way around yet with their, you're still working on it? Okay, Carrie. I see you're giving me the high sign there. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit while we're finishing up on that. I'm going to talk about embossing versus debossing. Some of you may think of this as embossing, but technically what we're going to be doing is called debossing. It's the opposite. So we're going to be pushing into it. And actually, if you flip it over, once you've debossed something, then you have an embossment. But when I do embossments, actually this is an example of an embossment where there's things that actually come up, that stick up. And that's a little bit different technique that I can show you how to do if anybody wants to know how to do that later. But what we're going to be doing for these feathers is called debossing, even though you kind of flip it back and forth. So technically you could call it embossing on the other side, if that makes any sense. How's yours coming, Ina? Oh, I like your edges. Those are good. Excellent. Oh, and Carrie, you're okay? Yay. Oh, those look great. I like what you did with the tip there. Okay, so now put your feather down on the face down onto your foam core, and let's start at the tip and using the general direction that you want to go as is on that photograph of the feather. Start putting some lines in, starting at where you ended the shaft and then going up towards the edge. And then you're just going to be putting really close parallel lines in. And they don't have to be super duper close together, because one thing I like to do is once you flip it over and you see those lines happening, then I often kind of go back and forth and I'll flip it over and then maybe do one along the edge and going the other direction from the front side. So I usually start with it face down, but it doesn't stay face down for long because I kind of like to go back and forth, because I think it gives it more of that sort of waviness that a feather gets.
A question.
Yes.
So the feather Seems to be sticking out on this side, the way I'm holding it. It needs to be sticking out towards me.
Yes.
We'll have it the other way around, right?
Well, you can flip, it can go either way.
So which,
You gotta, you just have to decide which is your front and which is your back. You want the front side of it to have the shaft coming toward you.
okay, so when you do the pencil drawings on the other side.
Yeah, I usually put a few pencil lines in on the back side so that you can see where that's gonna be. Does that make sense? Cool. But you know what? What I did is I had it going the wrong way and I flipped it around. I mean, you can, if you put your pencil lines on that side and don't want them there, you can either erase them or you can decide that your feather goes the other direction. Because at this point, we're still forming, we're still making the shape. Making the paper have this shape and the debossing and the forming of the shaping of the paper is, in my opinion, really what makes it have a more sculptural feel to it rather than just being a flat cutout. So it really, this is the part, I love doing this because this is the part that makes it feel like a real feather. And there's a couple other things that I'll show you once we get this done as to how to get an even more sort of almost iconic feather look to it. And remember to try and make your lines have some curve to them. And refer back to the photo if you need to remember the direction that they go. So that none of us is making Christmas trees. It's the first day of fall. Not ready for Christmas. And I would recommend that you go down about as far as where the pattern starts getting a little fatter at the bottom. And then we'll work on that part separately. And timing wise, I have to tell you that I have, one time when I was demonstrating one of these feathers, I worked on the same feather for an entire day. It was my 8-hour feather. So you certainly don't have to spend that much time on it, but it's kind of open-ended how much time you want to spend on it, because if you get it perfectly the way you want it and want to stop, you certainly can. But I have found that sometimes with the paper, the more you work on it, it almost becomes like the sculpture aspects of it really come out, and it becomes something more than just a flat piece of paper. So the amount of pressure that you're putting can vary. You don't want to pop through the paper with your tool. However, if you do pop through the paper with your tool, which I have done many times, there's a way that we can fix that, so don't panic. that's you haven't ruined it. There's a way to fix that. And I'll show you that in a little bit. And I'm going back and forth from one side to the next and kind of going back over. You know, I've got the lines all basically in there to show me the direction I want them to go. And then I'm kind of pick out, like maybe go about a ½ inch up and do a few more from the other direction to get that kind of waviness in there. Particularly at the top, it seems like the feather wants to be even more wavy at the very, very top. So Mavis has signed off. She's going to join us again on Thursday to work on the owl. So this actually works out kind of okay because, like I said, she has already made a feather with me right in my studio. So she was kind of ahead of the game on this one. Oh, you are still here. I wondered about that because you said you were leaving. So you're here and you're just watching. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm glad you're still here. I was remembering back that day in the studio working on it was a beautiful day. We worked in the studio making feathers, and then we went over to the Audubon and took a nice walk. It was lovely. I think that was the first time I ever met you. How's it coming, Carrie? Good. Here, let me make you. This will be better if I can spotlight. I'm going to spotlight your video so I can see you. Let's see your feather. Oh, that's looking good. Excellent. Ina, you want to show me what you got? Here, I'll spotlight you. Let's see how yours is coming. You got a Christmas tree? Let me see, Ina. No, you don't. That's not a Christmas tree. That's perfect. That paper seems to be working okay for you. Good. Your Astro Bright, yes. Excellent. All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next part. If you guys want to go back and do more on that, you can later. But let's keep moving on this a little bit so we don't run out of time. So now, if you go back to your scissors and what we want to do here is find, you'll see how on the real feather, let's see, what's the best way to show this? I think the gray is probably as good as any. If you look on the real feather, you'll see that it's sort of solid partway down here, and then it turns to the downy part. There we go. That's better. You can see that downy part is sort of solid there. So you kind of want to find that on your feather that you're making, and mark that in a little bit. And I'll tell you that it's almost impossible to get the actual downiness out of this cardstock. And what I like to do is take the tissue paper, or I use this Unrayu or the rice paper that we talked about earlier. If you take bits of that and use it to replicate the downiness of those feathers, it's going to work better for you. But we don't need to do that just yet. But I'm just explaining that you don't want to expect too much from cardstock, because I have tried cutting it as absolutely close as possible. And I mean, I can get some pretty fine cuts like that, but it still doesn't look downy because it's still too stiff. But if you compare that with, this is a feather I was working on the other day. This is what you can get with the different kinds of the Japanese papers in general work great. So this is a bunch of different papers that I worked on with this one to give it a more downy feel to it. So going into this, the part we're going to do now with the scissors, and I'll caution you, this is the only thing that can really mess this up, is if you go too far. I was going to find one I can do it with. Here, I'll give you an example of what not to do. You don't want to go all the way in and make a cut like that too much. You can do a couple like that. You can even do a couple 3, and they'd probably be fine. But you can really mess up the structure of the feather, and then it won't hold up. It'll just go flopping. So like if you do a sharp line there and a sharp line there, then you end up with this. And that's a sad feather. So my connection is a little wonky. Uh-oh. I knew that was going to do that to me at some point. Let me see if I can make that come back. But anyway, if I have to, I can show you right here. But bear with me a second and I'll see if I can get this to reconnect. There, cool. No need to panic. All right, so we don't want this to happen because that's sad. So you just want to be careful. I like putting some of the little lines in like this, because that's really what gives it its featheriness. But you'll notice like this one doesn't go all the way in, and this one does. But like I was saying, if you have an issue, like in my case, I have a coffee stain that even though it's the back side, it kind of bugs me a little bit. So I might be inclined to cut in there and get rid of that. So by making a few little cuts, 2 or 3 of them at the most, you can get your feather to have a more true feather look to it. So I'm fine with putting that one in there to get rid of my coffee stain, but then down here, I'm going to be putting in quite a few of them, but not going in all the way. And the trick to this is to balance your scissors on your finger to help steady it, and then feed the paper into the scissors a tiny bit at a time. And if it accidentally cuts off a piece like that, then it's okay. Just it's probably good, because then it'll create a little space in there. But this will give you that nice little feathery edge to it. And we're not going to do this whole thing like that, because then the structure of our feather would be really poor. So I'm just going to do a few, and you can do yours however you want. It's your feather. And sometimes, but the trick really is that if you balance it with your little finger, it really does kind of help. So that's, now you'll notice that the feathers, that the paper has a tendency to bend one direction or the other. So sometimes I'll flip it over and do it the other way, because I like what's going on. I'm sure it's got something to do with the grain of the paper, but let's see, now this way, when I did it that direction, it kind of curled back in. And you can also use a bone folder or something to give it some of that shape if you want to, but it will kind of naturally do that one way or the other. So I like getting a good fuzzy edge on the bottom. And it just kind of takes a little bit of experimenting to see how far in you want to go with it, and kind of make them have different shapes to them. You don't want to be too regular with it, because nothing in nature is all that regular. So I want it to have a little bit of and you can also deboss, all like we did on the top of this. You can do that all the way down. Sometimes in the case of the one that I'm working on with you guys today, I was figuring it's going to have other paper on top of it. So it won't really need to have too much texture in it. It's really more about getting the edges to look nice, because we're going to put some other paper on top of it that would just cover up anything we did there anyway. And remember, I told you I never used the tip of the scissors. That wasn't really true, because sometimes I'll come in and take the tip of the scissors and kind of cut up the edges of the paper to not, because sometimes they're kind of too square. Even when you've got really close cuts, sometimes they're a little square. So if you kind of cut off the edge like that with, yes, the tip of the scissors that I said I never used. So that's how that goes. And I like my torn side better than my cut side, so I'm actually going to tear a little bit more on that. Mavis, did I not teach you this part before? You can unmute yourself, you know, and talk if you like. I feel a little funny just talking to myself. I feel, you know, Bill says I talk to myself all this time, so you know, this really isn't any different, but you guys are so quiet.
We're muted. That'll make us quiet.
You're not muted.
I'm not, I know. There. Where's my thingy? Oh,
I know it's backwards, isn't it? Sorry, go ahead.
I'm trying to stick it into my camera. I can't find the camera here.
Yeah,
That's not far enough.
I think it looks good. I would do a few of them a little bit deeper. Try to get, like, maybe right at the beginning, like this part, like right at the beginning of that, get one down in a little bit deeper so that you can get some of that, trying to make it show that kind of effect. That makes sense?
That's really fine.
Well, in all fairness, I have been cutting paper for a long time. So remember, let's not forget, this was my first effort. So you're already light years ahead of that.
That's better than what I got.
I don't think so. I think what you're getting looks good. Yes, Mavis, you are right. You said to me that adding the material to do the downy part. Yeah, I can show you while everybody's finishing up their little cuts there. I can show you some of the examples of. This is one that I did. It was part of a Monday movie that I did about this, because I dreamed about this feather that Ina took a picture of a bird and we had talked about the spoonbill feather, but adding this paper onto it, I think really gives it. And this one, actually, I've got some several different layers of paper in there to try and get that feeling that you get from a feather. Let's see, I got another one here. This one's kind of wild, but and that's the same paper that I'm using today. But you can see how I got the little cuts along the edge, and then it doesn't really matter what's going on underneath there because you don't really see it. I think yeah, and this was done on watercolor paper. So I didn't do as much with the debossments and stuff. I let the watercolor do the work. But the other way I sometimes try and show the downy part is by cutting like this, but there's no way I can possibly cut as fine as what the real thing is. So, and it gives you kind of the essence of it. That's all done with a knife. But okay, so how you doing, Carrie? Here, I'm gonna put you in the spotlight here so that I can see you. All right, now let's see. Let me see the other end. Oh, I like that. Okay. Yeah, I like your cut into the sides of it. Those are perfect. They're very feathery. I wouldn't do any more. I think you got it perfect. And then if you now you need to do the part in the downy part down there. And those, I mean, I would just try to get those as close as you can, and don't worry about it too much because it's just a little essence of that you need. And then once you get that lightweight tissue paper on there, it's gonna that's gonna really do the work for making that downy feeling to it. So before we get to that part, I would go ahead and make the shaft, including the quill portion of your. I forgot to take you out of the spotlight. Here we go. There. Okay, so I would go ahead and get the quill portion of it kind of folded to get that more solid feel to that, and then you can flip your feather back over and put a little bit more of your embossing into that center part to kind of reinforce that a little bit, make sure that's real clear. Having all those lines that stop at that edge are kind of helping to define it. But you also have to kind of run over it a little bit. If you do it too much, the paper can get a little bit overworked. But the paper that I'm using is pretty tolerant of me doing that. And I like kind of going back and forth and really manipulating that thumb technique to get that that feeling of the shaft. Right? It starts actually really looking like a feather, which is always kind of amazing to me. Because what you start out with just a cartoon of a flat piece of paper can actually start looking much more realistic. And if you really want to get if you're totally trying to get that feeling of the shaft, this is very much like vellum. So here's an example of a black feather where I've applied with glue a bit of vellum on there. And it does take it sort of to the next level to do that. But a lot of my feathers don't have it. I mean, this one doesn't have it. And I think it reads pretty well because your eye doesn't really go to that so much. But if you're really trying to do something that replicates a real feather, the vellum is very helpful for that. And then the other thing is that at this point, I'm just kind of bending that over, but you can certainly put another line on either side of that and try and kind of push like if we were sewing, that would be like the seam allowance or something. Like make a little edge to go in there, because that'll kind of bend it in there, and then it won't be so obviously just a piece of paper folded in half. I think that has a little more round feel to it. And then, you know, different options for the end of it. Sometimes I leave it like that. Sometimes I cut it off more rounded. Because if you look again, you know, looking back at a real feather, it's got the little hole in it, and it kind of tapers down to that. You can kind of do that. Sometimes I'll even fold that end in underneath it. But today I think I'm just going to do that. So if you guys are ready to do the fuzzy bit, I'm going to use this on mine, which is recommended if you're using tissue paper or rice paper, whatever you've got. I would recommend that you tear it. You don't want any hard edges on what you're going to be doing. You can fold it to get some kind of crinkly effect into it that way if you like. And then add your glue stick in there. And I normally have a different sheet for that, but I want you to see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to use the flip side of this to do this. Because of course the glue stick will get on whatever you're gluing on. So if you apply some glue stick onto the one side of the feather and then start, you know, kind of decide how you want the fuzzies to be. You're going to put several layers in there depending on how your stuff works. And if you want to let it hang out the edges, that's fine, because you can tear that off. It doesn't have to be real perfect. In fact, you kind of want it loose and not too perfect. Vellum. Ina asked about vellum. Vellum is a filmy paper that, this is a feather that's entirely made of vellum. Let me see how best you can see that. And you'll see that it's translucent. A lot of my pieces that I do have vellum elements to them because I really love this paper. In the olden days, vellum was made from some, I don't know, animal part or something like intestines or something that's gross. Now it's made out of plastic. It's a plasticized paper, but it's used. You see it a lot in invitations. You'll see people using it. People will print on a, like a fancy wedding invitation might have a little vellum sheet with something printed on it. But it comes in different colors. I did one piece that I know Ina's familiar with, which is my napping Bumblebee. Was a piece that had clematis flowers that was made entirely of vellum. And it has a similar look to it as the shaft of a feather. So that's one of the reasons. I even sometimes will put a solid white center and then add the vellum on top of it to give that kind of feeling like the feather has. So hopefully that answered that. I didn't ask you to get vellum because I figured it would be harder to find. You can get white vellum really easily. I have to special order the colors that I use, and it usually comes in crazy multi-packs, so I end up with some very odd colors sometimes. But so how's that tissue paper working, Ina?
What do you want us to do with it other than glue it on?
Well, you can glue it on. You can kind of, let me see what you got so far.
No, I just glued it on. I don't have a glue stick.
Well, that's fine. So when you have with something that's lightweight like tissue paper or the papers that I'm working with, the stuff, you'll find that the glue stick will work better because the tissue paper will soak up the glue, and you'll see it. So I do recommend a glue stick if you can find that. If you don't have that, then I think just let yours dry, because it's going to take a few minutes to dry through. That's one of the nice things about the glue stick, is it's quicker too. But once it's dry, then go ahead and put some more cuts in there, and then maybe do some more debossing on it with your crochet hook there, and try and get some of those nice feathery kind of looks to, the downy looks to the bottom of the feather. So at this point, I'm kind of thinking mine could use a little bit more cuts into it. So I'm going to cut right into my fuzzy parts here and let it kind of have a few extra bits that stick up more. And when you get down to the very bottom of it by the edge, you can go into that and get a little bit more sort of loose, like let it just kind of be messier down there. I think that kind of helps too. And if you have some that end up kind of triangular shaped like that, you can come in and either cut them into more pieces, or you can just cut them out. How you doing, Carrie? You okay? Oh, I bet that works fine. You got the mechanical pencil and a straight pin. Can scratch the surface at the bottom of my feather to make it look downy. Hey, that's perfect. I say anything that works. You can gnaw it with your teeth if you want. Yeah, that's hard to do with a mask on. Yeah, I think, you know, I just started working on it. I mean, even literally just using my fingers, you can get that kind of, you just want to change the shape of the paper a little bit. And I think having it have a little bit more sculptural quality by smashing it around a little and, you know, experimenting a little bit, as long as you preserve that sense of that center shaft, it works pretty well. But yeah, a pin would work. Sure, that would be great. A mechanical pencil, I have one sitting around here somewhere, and I never thought of that. That's actually a pretty brilliant idea. Because half the time my mechanical pencils don't have any leads in them anyway, so.
Wendy, what do you do at the top of this tissue paper?
Let me see.
Where it's, you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would say at that point, maybe tear it back a little bit and then maybe put another layer. Once your glue dries, maybe put another layer on top of there that's smaller than that so that it'll blend into that a little more. Let me see. If I show you, like, see how that shape is. Maybe if you tear into the tissue paper a little bit from the top, you know, don't like cut it back with a scissors, but tear it with your fingers. I bet you can make that feel more a little more organic shape.
Nothing about this looks organic.
Well, I would recommend that if you can, I know you're not going to be able to be at the next class, but we'll get you caught up with watching a recording, or you can just get started on that. But that's going to be that'll give you a chance to maybe pick up a glue stick, because I think you'd be happier with that, because the glue just kind of soaks through on the lightweight paper.
Mm-hmm.
So we're at we've got about maybe 12 minutes left of class here. So I'm thinking I want to talk a little bit about preparations for Thursday. Well, I mean, you guys can keep working, of course, and you can work on them later too and put more into them. In fact, I've got a video that I was going to show you the video about how to make this feather. But if you have any questions about it, about what I taught you today, you can look at, I have a tutorial video that I did that's on YouTube. So just go to my YouTube channel, which is Wendy Bale. Just search for Wendy Bale and you'll see it. And it is, let's see, I'm going to share the screen for a second. You guys can keep working, but let me just, let me see if I can, So this is my YouTube channel, and there's a whole bunch of different videos on there, but this one right here, which is episode 47, is making a cut paper feather, and pretty much everything that I've just told you about is done in rather quick time there, but you can get the basics of it from that. And then I wanted to, hopefully this is going to 47. This is some ideas of what you can do depending on what kind of paper you use to make your feather today. You can add watercolor and such, but this is a quick little video, which I was going to show you, but I'm kind of inclined to have you just go check it out yourself. That one, it's a two-part, it's actually a three-part, this one is a three-part thing. So making a cut paper feather, number 47 is what we did today, and then number 48 is, which is part 2, shows you different ways to embellish it. So if you want to go forward with this feather, or if you want to make another feather, or you want to play around with this a little bit more before we start our owl on Thursday, feel free, and I would love to see what you can do with it. I'm gonna stop screen sharing a second here and show you, this is an example of a feather that was done using pen, and I've got a silver pen and a white pen and just a plain old black pen. I did put, this was really lightweight paper, so I did put a reinforcing strip on the back of that to give it a little bit more, because it was kind of floppy. But this is one that's got some charcoal added to it. I've already showed you the pink one that this is done with Yupo, which is a water media paper. It's also plasticized. This is one where I just did it with green cardstock, made it just the way we were talking about doing, including putting the fuzzy down here. But then I took a paper punch to it and put some holes in it. And this one I've already showed you that has some watercolor to it, and this one is done with a little bit of colored pencil and some white pen. So you can do fun stuff with them afterwards and embellish them if you want, or you can just enjoy them in their whiteness. Either way, it's up to you. It's your feather. But that was kind of the part I wanted to show you next. Hang on, I'm going to switch over to sharing the screen again. And I want to show you, I can figure out, there we go. My screen always looks different when I go back to it, and then I don't know what I'm showing you. So I'll close those out. So this is essentially what I was just talking to you about. That's the one that I would recommend if you want to take a look at that. But then, sorry, I can't find the, well, I want to show you this, but I'm going to show you that in a minute. Let me just go back to me here. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about this owl. Hopefully, I don't know if you can see it as well on this, or whether I'd be better off showing you on the other screen. But so this is the piece that we're going to work on over the next 3 classes, and I tried to simplify it down so that it wouldn't be super time consuming, but I have found that I have a tendency to make things more complicated than I need to. So I tried to do this. I did this one as a white snowy owl because I like being able to show you easily that something that will show up nicely in white. But I know that for example, Ina, who lives in Florida, probably doesn't see a lot of snowy owls. Probably not her normal owl. So I wanted to do, so last night I thought I am going to do the same exact pattern, only I'm going to use brown so that we can get a brown owl. So it can look more like, maybe put some horns on it, make it a great horned owl, or a screech owl, or whatever. And in the process of doing that, I totally tore up my pattern as I was doing it, and I kind of off-roaded and made something completely different. But I ended up with this guy. So for those that like owls, so I just want, this is essentially the same pattern, but I kind of, it just shows you that once you start kind of tearing up paper and putting it on there, you know, the pattern does not need to be followed. It's just a guide. It doesn't need to be followed slavishly. You can make it be your own, because I'm hoping that when we're done with this, everybody's owl will look different. And but I did not mean to go quite so crazy with this guy. He has at this point, his head hasn't been attached because I can't decide yet how it's going to look. So that's what I wanted to show you real quick. Let me go back to screen sharing because I want to show you the little reel that I made with him on Instagram. So. So, I make it stop. That's too funny. No, I can't make him be quiet. Be quiet, dude. Okay, so we'll stop the share. There we go. So anyway, I like to play with my cut paper pieces. I've done a lot of stop motion videos and things with them, and they're really fun to play with. So it's not, for me, it's kind of a multimedia art, and I really like doing it. So I'm hoping that if you guys want to further work on your feathers, and we can take a look at where you ended up, or if you have any other questions, let me know. You know, if you guys want to unmute yourselves, and we can talk a little bit. So I was just reading some comments here. This is good. We have. Does everybody have their handout printed out and are ready to cut out the? I mean, I'm going to do this step by step with you, and I designed it so that you won't need anything in terms of knives or anything. You can do it all with scissors. But I do think, you know, the glue stick will be helpful for Ina. Is there anything else anybody has concerns about?
Yeah, it's still wet and it drips.
Yeah, you're gonna have you'll have to wait a while for that to dry, I think. But okay, if you want a head start on that on these pattern pieces, feel free to go ahead and cut out the first few pages, but really be aware that this one with the weird shape here, that you have to cut out that square only to begin with, because this is really the only tricky part. And this is really just me trying to make it so that you didn't have to use a knife. So, so once I walk you through that part, everything else should be pretty, pretty straightforward. But yeah, what did you guys think of making feathers? All right, getting the thumbs up. Nancy, are you gonna go home and make a feather tonight?
I am. You know it. No, it's a
Good.
great class. I'm so sorry I can't participate, but
Oh, I
you know, of
know.
course it's recorded. So
That's
like
true.
Hyla and Lindsay, you know, we'll be doing the same thing. We'll be doing it at nighttime at home.
Right. That's certain. We can certainly do it that way.
Yeah.
And I do think, you know, for those that maybe didn't join us today that might join us for the next class, I mean, like I said, I think teaching a feather kind of gives you some of the basic things that you need to know, but I'll be going over all that again
Great
as
training.
we're doing the next one. So
It's great training. Also, Wendy, I was thinking as well, because these classes will be recorded,
Mhm.
people that wouldn't be able to make the class, I mean, Tom's going to keep them on our website until December.
that's great.
So it is. It's wonderful. Hopefully we'll be able to know who's listening. Well, he knows from the website management part for the reporting.
Excellent.
So yeah, so it's lovely that way.
That's good.
Yeah. So great class.
Thank you.
Yes, very nice.
Good. I'm glad you guys were able to join, and I'm looking forward to making the owl with you next. And I have a feeling that my owl will turn out differently. Every time I've tried to do something again, if I've done a piece and then I want to do one like that, it never comes out the same. So
Not
that's gonna
production
happen.
work. Yeah.
It's original.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. Well, I'll end the recording.
Thank you.
And there we go. So cool. I'm glad
What happened to
you guys
Joanne?
had fun.
Did Joanne have to leave?
Yeah, she said something about somebody showed up. There was something in the chat.
Oh, okay. But well, she can see the class. It's recorded. So I recorded it. Tom will be able to see, and then he'll put it up so she
Yeah,
can
she
finish.
said, "I'm sorry. I have someone at the door. I'll see you on Thursday."
Only in Zoom does that happen. Right. All right. Well, I look forward to listening and seeing you on Thursday.
Sounds good. Thank you for hosting.
Yeah, really nice job.
Nice to meet you, Carrie.